Great. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our e4health CDI Roundtable, Mindset Matters, empowering CDI through continuous learning. We appreciate you all for joining us today. Before we dive in, I just want to take a quick moment to say Happy Thanksgiving. Can you believe it? It's only a little over 3 weeks away. The fall is sure flying by for me. On behalf of all of us at e4health, and especially our CDI leadership team, we want to say a big, huge thank you to all our amazing colleagues, our wonderful e4health customers, and to all of you for joining us today. Your support and engagement is truly appreciated. We love being able to offer these free roundtable webinars as a way to give back to our incredible CDI and coding community. It's such a joy to connect, share, and learn together with you. So again, thank you for being here. Please know we're grateful for you and appreciate your attendance in our webinars. I truly love our CDI profession and all the opportunities it's given me. And while I enjoy the details of all the 79,000 ICD-10 codes, it's refreshing to step back and talk about something that impacts how we do our work and not just what we do. I know a topic like mindset might sound a little fluffy compared to the technical side of CDI and all the things we need to learn to keep our skills up, but sometimes it's good to pause and think about these softer topics, especially mindset, because the way we think shapes everything, how we learn, how we handle challenges, how we interact with others. So our hope today is simple, that one idea sticks and you'll be inspired a little bit. So today's game plan, first, I'll walk through these objectives, which is we'll talk about what a growth mindset really means, not just the buzzwords we hear all the time, but how it actually looks and feels in our day-to-day work. We'll also look at how our mindset shows up in CDI, and we'll wrap up with a few simple strategies to help us push past those barriers. And because we all deserve those I got this moments, right? Our quick disclaimer, the information and opinions presented here are based on our experience at e4health, and you can kind of read that disclaimer, but this information is intended just to be a guide, which should not be considered a legal opinion or advice. Second, then, once I get done talking about the growth mindset stuff, we have an amazing group of panelists that you'll get to hear towards the middle of our presentation today, and we're in for a real treat. We're lucky to have Jen Murphy, who is the CDI manager at LifeBridge, and Deb Jones, who's the senior director of Insight at Tendo. Thank you, ladies, so much for joining us. I know we're in for a real treat from hearing from you later today. And Vanessa Elliott will be doing the interview for that. And then also stay tuned after we have our roundtable discussion. Alison Swinehart will share how to claim your free ACTA CEU. Let's get started. Let's do a quick mental check-in. I'm guessing your to-do list is like mine, a mile long, and many of you are probably multitasking right now. No judgment, I would be too. But if you could, take a couple deep breaths. Think about the last time you faced something totally new. Maybe it was a brand new EMR system that made you want to pull your hair out, or a CDI audit that popped up on your calendar you were dreading, or even something at home trying to assemble furniture that had way too many pieces. What was your first reaction? Did you feel frustrated or overwhelmed? Or did you think, okay, this is a chance to figure it out? That difference, that tiny shift in perspective, that's what the growth mindset is all about. The idea came from, I believe, the guru Carol Dweck. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, who said and wrote the book about mindset is becoming is better than being. And I love that because it reminds us that growth mindset isn't about being perfect. It's about believing we can learn, adapt, and keep getting better one step at a time. So let's unpack that and why it's such a big deal for us. At its core, growth mindset is the belief that our abilities and intelligence can grow with effort, learning, and persistence. In other words, we're not stuck where we are. We can always get better. Now, if we're being real for a second, we can all have fixed mindset moments. I know I have. You know those times when you think, I'm just not good with technology, or they're criticizing me, so I must not be good at this, or this chart is way too complicated, this patient's way too sick, I'm never going to figure it out. Anyone been there? That's what we call fixed mindset. It's when we see intelligence or ability as something stagnant. But here's the magic part. When we shift our minds a little bit into growth mindset, that inner voice starts to sound different. Instead, it might say, okay, I can learn this system if I practice and ask a few questions, or this feedback shows me where I can improve. Or even this chart looks complicated, but it's a chance to learn something new. That tiny shift from I can't to I can learn, it helps our abilities develop with effort. Let's even look at it a little bit different way. We can look at the contrast between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And most of us have lived on both sides at one time or another. Some days we're ready to take on the world, and other days not so much. When we're in a fixed mindset, things can feel heavy. We feel stuck, frustrated, defensive. Change can seem overwhelming, and thoughts creep in. This is just how I am. This is how it's always going to be. Or that all too familiar, this is the way we always done it. But when we're in a growth mindset, everything feels different. It's more curious, flexible, open. We're collaborative, flexible, resourceful. It doesn't mean that things suddenly get easy. It means that we trust that efforts pay off. We can adapt, and every experience has something to teach us. One of my favorite nonfiction authors is John Gordon. He talks about this beautifully in his book, The Energy Buzz. It's such an encouraging read if you haven't ever gotten a chance to read it. It's a fun, easy read. And he shares this great reminder. Focus on get to instead of have to. So often we say, and I know I say this too, is I have to finish this, or I have to finish this review, or I have to send this query. But when we flip it to, I get to do this work, I get to make an impact, showing the complete clinical picture of my patients, I get to learn something new, it completely changes our energy and outlook. I'll admit I need this reminder every single Monday morning. After a relaxing weekend with family and friends, Mondays and we don't always get along. But when I remind myself that I really do love my job and I get to work with the best teammates and support amazing CDI programs across the country, that perspective shifts makes all the difference. So here's a little reflection question for you. When you think about your day-to-day work or your personal life, which mindset do you notice more often? Fixed or growth? No judgment, just something to think about as we move forward. I love this quote. Your mindset determines your success. If you believe you can, you'll find a way. If you believe you can't, you'll find an excuse. So why does it matter? Besides something that might look really good on an inspirational coffee mug, but in our lives, personal lives, our growth mindset helps us roll with the punches. It builds resilience, adaptability, and personal growth. Basically, it keeps us from losing it when life throws us a curveball, and we all get thrown those. In the CDI profession, the mindset shows up every day. It keeps us curious instead of frustrated when reviewing charts. Keeps us learning because we all know in CDI coding and healthcare in general, change is the only thing we can really count on. And it makes us better collaborators with providers, coders, quality, and each other. Research really supports why mindset matters. A few stats here from the Harvard Business Review, and this review found that growth mindsets teams have higher trust, stronger commitment, and more innovation. In short, they work better and feel better. When we shift more to a growth mindset, we can create a growth culture in CDI. We build stronger teams, better communication, and ultimate better outcomes for ourselves and our organizations. So that kind of explains what growth mindset is, but what does it actually look like in real life? It's one thing to talk about growth mindset, but it's really another thing to practice it. When our inboxes are full, our charts are stacking up, our coffee's gone cold, this is where it really gets real and how we can help make mindset really apply it in our lives. Let's talk through some scenarios. We all know life can be messy. I know mine can. And sometimes that mess spills over into work because before we're CDI professionals, we're people. We have families, challenges, pets, and busy lives outside of our charts and queries. So here's a quick personal impact example. Think about someone or yourself recovering from a setback. maybe an injury, an illness, or a big life change. With a fixed mindset, you might focus on what you can't do. I'll never get back where I was, or we've all heard from the Debbie Downers and the negative Nellies, and sorry, Nellie and Debbie, if you're out there, but sometimes we hear those and we can be those people. But with a growth mindset, that focus shifts into what we can do, one small step at a time. And those small wins build confidence, strength, and resilience. That's the power of growth mindset. And when we practice that mindset in life, it naturally shows up at work too. It shifts from Debbie Downer, negative Nancy to can do Debbie and can do Nancy. It changes how we handle changes, how we learn, and how we show up. How about clinical documentation specialists who dreaded using a new EMR? They felt overwhelmed at first, but instead of giving up, they took it step by step, practicing, asking questions, and slowly getting more comfortable. Over time, what once felt intimidating became second nature. And maybe some of you are as old as I am and remember doing CDI before we even had electronic EMR. And when they said we were switching to electronic record, we're like, our first thought's like, that's going to be impossible. How's that going to work? And all of that training and planning and go live. Now, oh my goodness, I would never want to go back trying to read doctors' handwriting ever again. So during that process of that, we built some confidence, like, hey, we can do this. And each small win taught us that we can learn and adapt. We start to see mistakes differently, not as failures, but as feedback and opportunities to improve. Think about the last time you had to learn a new tool or process. What helped you push past that frustration and keep going? This may be a familiar scenario to some of you with CDI and coding conflict during reconciliation. When the CDI teams and coding teams are reviewing reconciliation, it can sometimes feel like we're speaking two different languages. One side says the documentation supports it, and the other side might say not quite. But instead of going in circles or getting frustrated, the team decides to come together. They walk through the charts. They leave their defensiveness at the door and talk it out and realize, hey, we're actually after the same goal here, accurate, clear documentation. And once they start collaborating, things shift. The conversations become easier, the gray areas get clearer, and reconciliation becomes less of a tug of war and more of a team effort. And it's fun for us when we work with CDI teams across the country. And I love it when we're talking about, how is it working with our coding teams? And they'll say, hey, we have a great collaboration. And I love that because that's the way it should be. And I believe it's because of that growth mindset between the two teams, having the same goal. And that growth mindset just really helps impact things where we can all learn from each other, right? Coding professionals, CDI, from our providers, from quality. And it really has that impact of better accuracy, less rework, stronger partnership, and maybe fewer all caps emails. You ever get those from your coding or CDI partners of underlining, big letters, that kind of thing? And maybe if we just all had a little bit more of a growth mindset, we would have fewer of those type of emails. Here's another real world example of how growth mindset can show up when we're facing something tough, like an external audit. Finds that several CDI queries did not align with the current ACTIS and HEMA guidelines. Now I know the word audit can make anyone's heart rate goes up a little, right? I know mine can. But instead of discouragement or finger pointing, a growth mindset helps turn that moment into a catalyst for improvement for the individual, the team, and CDI as a whole. Let's say as a CDI specialist, I get feedback from an audit. And at first, that initial feedback stings, right? We've all been there. That little voice says, ugh, I'll never get this right. Or what was I thinking? But with growth mindset, we take that deep breath. We look at the feedback. We join the education session and start practicing our improved query writing skills. Over time, confidence grows, accuracy improves, and suddenly that feedback feels like progress instead of punishment. At the team level, instead of playing the blame game or everyone comes together to review the findings. They share ideas, tweak templates, offer tips to each other. Queries become more clear, more compliant, maybe even provider response improves. And the best part, the team gets stronger, more cohesive, more consistent, and more collaborative. And this example just shows how mindset can just ripple across the organization. What starts as a frustrating challenge can actually drive personal growth, team development, and measurable improvement across CDI. Allison Swinehart, who will be wrapping things up for us, who is our amazing e4health CDI director, has a great way of looking at this. She calls audits a gift, and every time she says that, I love it because it means your organization is investing in you, recognizing your value and what you do matters, and giving you the opportunity to learn and to shine. Sometimes that's hard to take, but it really is that mindset shift of, hey, they're looking for what I'm doing wrong, instead of, hey, they're providing me this gift of getting better. They're investing in me. Here's another real world example that we're all probably dealing with more and more as AI becomes more of a thing in our industry. And we hear that our organization is launching a new CDI tool with AI-assisted query suggestions. The first thought some of us might have, I know I have, is, wait, is this thing going to replace me? Totally normal to feel that twinge of worry. Change, especially technology change, can feel intimidating. But here's the good news. Tools like this probably aren't going to replace us. They're here to enhance what we do. They make us faster, sharper, and even more effective. And maybe we'll like it even, and maybe we'll be able to work more at the top of our license instead of doing busy work, using those critical thinking skills. But at first, it's normal for us to feel overwhelmed. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to figure this out, or this doesn't make any sense. But with a growth mindset, we lean in, we take the training seriously, we ask questions, we keep practicing. And before long, we're comfortable with the new tool and we become more and more confident. Our team starts to collaborate. We share tips and tricks. We swap out shortcuts. We're helping each other out. And some of those early adapters, they're becoming your team's unofficial tech coaches. And soon enough, what started as fear turns into momentum. With growth mindset, we think AI doesn't replace us, it empowers us. It turns stressful rollout into an opportunity to grow, learn, and shine. One more real world example. Let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, new productivity benchmarks. Your leadership team is rolling out new benchmarks for a CDI specialist. At first, the reaction for many of us probably is like, wait, they want us to do what? Or maybe that's impossible. One CDI specialist starts to worry they'll never hit their number. That could happen to many of us. We can get frustrated when we look about, it's about quality instead of quantity, and we can get all worked up about that. At least I know I can. But with growth mindset, we shift our gears a bit. Instead of panicking, we look for ways to work smarter, create efficiencies, get rid of redundant work. We ask for those tips. We start tracking small wins. And maybe pretty soon we'll build some confidence in what we thought was impossible actually is possible. Meanwhile, the team comes together. Instead of competing, they share their best shortcuts, workflow hacks, and start normalizing this like, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help? And really working together. Metrics become less about pressure and more about learning what's working. And the results, maybe productivity goes up, morale stays high, and everyone's cheering each other on instead of comparing. When we approach change with curiosity, how can I learn this? What can I learn from this? Instead of fear, that becomes a roadmap for growth. Hopefully, you can all see that there is some real world impact to a growth mindset. However, we all face barriers to achieving growth mindset. These are normal, and what matters is how we respond when these barriers show up. Another great quote here is, every expert was once a beginner who refused to stop learning. I can still remember about 6 months into CDI when I was a new CDS, I was sitting in my boss's office in tears. I just didn't think I was going to ever be able to get it figured out. I'd gotten some back from a coder, and I think it was carotid enderectomies. I'd put them in the wrong DRG. I was just frustrated, like, and this was after years of being confident as a nurse, being on the code team, caring for post-open heart and trauma patients, even managing a post-cath lab and cardiac floor. But CDI felt different. I think that's one of the hardest parts of the work that we do is there's always something more to learn. And just when you think you figured it out, the rules change again. So we are in challenging roles, but we can grow. So let's talk about some barriers. So we talked about the benefits, but it's important to pause and recognize that we do all face barriers. These are those thoughts, habits, or pressures that hold us back. And sometimes naming them and helping us notice what they are helps us respond differently. Because we probably all want to have a growth mindset, but it's not easy. Sometimes we run into these little mental roadblocks to keep us stuck. And the thing is, most of us have been there one time or another. So I'll talk about the 7 common barriers. Fear of failure, number 1. This one's big. That feel of, if I mess up, everyone's going to think I'm not good at this. For example, a CDI specialist might hesitate to send to a query because they're worried it'll get, rejected or no. But the truth is, mistakes don't define us, they teach us. Every no just helps us refine our next yes. That negative self-talk. That little voice that's in your head, like, I'll never be good at this, or, this isn't working. And that voice lies a lot. I recently read the book, Crash the Chatterbox, because my inner voice is full of negative self-talk. So for all you new CDI specialists, at first, it is a struggle, especially when coding updates every quarter, you really might start doubting yourself. But that's just part of learning. That's just your mindset, and you can flip the mindset shift to I can't get this to I can't yet. That quick little word yet in there. Number 3, resistance to change. This one for me might sound like, but we've always done it this way and we felt like it's working. But when a new tool or process comes along, it's easy to cling to that old one. But change doesn't mean what we did before was wrong. It just means we're ready to take it to the next level. Comparison to others. This one can get us. You see a colleague closing 10 more reviews a day, and suddenly you're questioning them and yourself. They surely must have extra time in the day. I see that sometimes with other leaders. I'm like, man, their personal life is going well, their professional life is rocking, and I'm like, I swear they have 26 hours in their day. But remember, growth isn't a race. Focus on your own progress, not someone else's pace. Perfectionism. This is for all my detail lovers. We just want everything to be just right before hitting send. But sometimes perfectionism slows us down and can actually stop us. Lack of time or that overload. This one's tough. We're all busy, and it's easy to say something like, I don't have time to learn something new. But even small moments like listening to a podcast, joining a quick education center session, or asking a question can spark growth. And 7, fear of feedback. That feedback, when we get that back, that's not positive, it can sting. It's so easy to take that feedback as just criticism, but it's really one of the best tools for growth. Instead of thinking, what did I do wrong? We can ask, what can I do better next time? And that simple shift changes everything. The key takeaway here is these barriers are totally normal. We are all flawed humans, but they don't have to stop us. And once we can recognize them, we can push past them and keep going. So we looked at the barriers. Now it's time to flip the story. The truth is, every one of those roadblocks as a simple detour, and a small, just a little shift can turn those moments into aha moments. So let's look at them again. And so fear of failure. No one wants to fail. However, instead of seeing our mistakes or failures, they feel like they're proof that we're not capable. Let's use that as a data, however you want to say it, for improvement. If a provider doesn't agree with our query, that's not failure, it's feedback. Review it, tweak your wording, and use it as a step forward toward a better yes next time. Every miss is just part of our learning curve. Negative self-talk, that inner voice that says, I can't do this. Well, we all know it, but here's the trick. Replace I can't with I can learn, or I don't know that yet. Instead of saying, I'll never master risk-adjusted coding, say, I'm still learning this and getting better each week. Resistance to change. Change, everyone's least favorite word. When a new tool or process comes along, instead of asking, why do we have to do this? Try asking, how can I make this work easier or more accurate? That one question moves you from resistance to curiosity. Comparison. It's easy to measure ourselves against the person next to us or around us, but it's about looking back and realizing how far you've come, not about how anybody else is. Track your own trends, not someone else's stats. Compete with your past self, and that's really the only benchmark that really matters. Perfectionism is sneaky. It makes us think that we're being productive even when we're just stalling. Submit that query instead of rewriting it for the 5th time. You'll learn more from provider responses than from the endless editing. Lack of time or overload. We're all busy, but growth doesn't have to be a full day training. Find little moments, some micro learning. Maybe read one of the new coding guidelines during a coffee break. Subscribe to the e4health CDI Insider to get your monthly CDI tip, or share a quick query tip in your huddle or with a colleague. Those tiny steps add up. And lastly, that fear of failure. That word that makes everyone tense up a little bit. Feedback. But here's the mindset shift. Treat feedback as a gift, not a judgment. When coding flags something, ask, hey, can you walk me through that? How you approach that? That turns critique into coaching, and suddenly feedback feels empowering instead of painful. The point is growth mindset isn't about never hitting barriers. It's about recognizing them and saying, oh, how can I turn this into a learning moment? Because every challenge is just a stepping stone to improvement, both in work and in life. Winston Churchill once said, perfection is the enemy of progress. And wow, does that ever hit home for those of us in CDI and in healthcare? Because let's be honest, if we wait until everything feels perfect before we move forward, we'll be waiting forever. So that growth mindset isn't about being flawless. It's about progress, being better than we were the day before. It's those small steps, building daily habits, and staying open to learning as we go. So as we think about how to grow our mindset, keep this in mind. It doesn't take one big leap. It's little, consistent actions that help us shift our perspective, build our confidence, and strengthen how we show up. It's my husband and I do that reminder constantly, like, not that I have to go to work. I get to go to work. We have lovely jobs. We have lovely colleagues. It's a blessing instead of I have to. So we've tackled the barriers. Now let's just focus on our growth. And don't worry, nope, doesn't require a personality transplant. Just a few small intentional tweaks that can make a big impact over time. Let's start with life outside of CDI, because growth mindset isn't just a work thing, it's a life thing. When challenges pop up, instead of thinking, why is this happening to me? Try asking, what can I learn from this? And I think that's a lot easier the older I get than when I was younger. But when bad things happen, have a little mourning, little pity party, and then move to, what can I learn from this? Replace I can't do this with I can't do this yet. And celebrate the effort, not just the outcome. And maybe that means trying something new, a hobby, a class, or a goal that stretches you. Now bringing it into our CDI world, every chart review, every patient review is a chance to learn something new. Feedback from coders, providers, or audits, that's gold. It's like free mini training sessions, even if it doesn't always feel like it is in the moment. Staying current with ACDIS and HEMA, listening to free webinars, that keeps our brains growing and logging learning moments, from tricky cases to teachable moments. And you all can give yourself a pat on the back, a little gold star for attending today's webinar, because, hey, you're doing something to grow your mindset. And finally, growth really takes root in the team environment. Share those wins in your huddles, big and small. Normalize asking questions and learning from mistakes. Look, those new people that are on your team, reach out to them, be a mentor, let them ask them, hey, do you need any help? I remember first starting and this was really hard and I want to be here for you. And celebrate your progress, not just productivity numbers, because at the end of the day, when we build a culture where feedback equals growth, not criticism, we all rise together. So whether it's in your life, your CDI work, or across your team, growing your mindset is about showing up, being curious, flexible, and ready to learn. It's progress, one conversation, one chart, one mindset shift at a time. So Maybe you can tell I do love this topic, maybe because I know I'm such a work in progress and can have a tendency to be stuck and want to continue to grow and improve. And I hope each of you have one quick key takeaway or a little inspiration about changing your mindset here and there and remembering that it's progress, not perfection. And so we're almost to our roundtable discussion where we'll get to listen to our panelists talk about how they apply some of these things. But I want to give you 4 quick and easy reminders that you can maybe take away with you for your growth mindset. First, I can't do this to I can't do this yet. That word yet reminds us that progress takes time and practice, and it's okay to be learning. 2, next, that I get to do this, not I have to do this. We're alive, we're breathing, we're able to work. It's a shift from obligation to opportunity, and what we do matters, and that perspective makes a difference. Third, mistakes are lessons, not failures. Every mistake, every misstep teaches us something. Growth is rarely neat, but it will always be worth it. And at the end of the day, you've heard me say it a couple different times now, but it's not chasing perfection. It's about celebrating progress. Small steps lead to big growth, and we're all in a work in progress, trying to be the best we can, and that's a good thing. So keep learning, keep laughing, keep growing, because if we can tackle CDI queries, 79,000 plus ICD-10 codes, shifting guidelines, new tools, AI, we can handle just about anything. So if today's topic sparked something for you and you're a book lover like me, these are some of my favorite reads that really dive deeper into growth, your growth mindset, motivation. They're great for both personal and professional inspiration. Now I will turn it over to our CDI manager, Vanessa Elliott, as she spends some time discussing these topics with our panelists, Jen and Deb. And thank you for listening.
Hello. First of all, I want to thank Jen and Deb for joining us today. And I'm going to go ahead and start off with some questions. I'll start off with Jen first. Jen, can you please share a little bit with the group about your current role and your CDI background?
And Jen, I think you're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute. My current role, I am managing basically a team of 20 at LifeBridge Health, which is in Western Baltimore. My background, I've been a nurse for 33 years and mostly ICU. I still try to practice clinicals maybe twice a month, but I started in CDI right before ICD-10 came. So it's been about, what is it, like 15 years now?
Great. Thanks for sharing that. Jen, can you tell us how have you seen that a fixed mindset thinking show up in CDI teams or individuals, and what impact did that have on the performance or morale of the team?
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and I definitely see sometimes, not so much in my current role, but in my previous roles, I have seen where people assume that team members believe that only certain people can review certain cases. For example, she wasn't a cardiac nurse, so maybe we, would put her in a different area to cover, or a different service line to cover, or he's not very good at clinical validation queries. And I just think that this really limits collaboration. It discourages learning. It definitely affects morale. And I think that more than ever, I think people just kind of hesitate to ask questions and to share ideas, and that really puts a damper on everybody's learning.
Thank you. Can you share a time when shifting your mindset helped you overcome a professional challenge?
I was thinking about this too earlier. In my CDI journey, like early in my CDI journey, I think when Sepsis 3 was coming about, I was really struggling with the implementation of new query templates for the Sepsis 3, and it was having to be rolled out. There was a time constraint because we really needed it rolled out. So there was a lot of education that needed to be given. And I was met with like really strong resistance, and I was really frustrated. And thinking back, like I saw the feedback as more of a pushback, and I really shouldn't have thought that way. I had to take a step back. I had to engage with the team and redesign with the whole team and share the responsibility of the provider education. Um, I really think that collaboration and flexibility always leads to better outcomes.
Yes, thank you. What
Always.
what do you think are some key ingredients for building a growth-oriented CDI team culture that embraces feedback and innovation?
Yep, I think Stacy touched on this a lot. I think, especially as a leader, I think transparency is extremely important. And that the whole team has psychological safety and realizing, like Stacy said, we all have a shared purpose. You know, our purpose is all the same and our goals are all the same. Team members really need to feel safe, just giving and receiving feedback without fear of any judgment. So a lot of times, you know, our current CDI team right now, we're going through like quite a bit of audits, and like Stacy said, that can always, you know, make a person feel threatened. But we're not taking it that way. Like a lot of the audits, we do audit reviews, like where we actually look at the case and have case discussions. And I think the team members really like I'm always very aware of trying to, you know, protect the person's identity, but really they don't mind anymore. Like it's just open for discussions. Like how would you query for this? Would you not query for that? I've always been told this, or I've always been told that. Like the discussions, I think is where it's at.
That's great.
Yeah.
In a field where guidelines and technology change rapidly, how do you maintain continuous learning without feeling overwhelmed?
I think first of all, it's just knowing where the priorities are. Like we don't have to know everything all the, you know, immediately as after they come out, especially with CDI. I always feel bad for the coding team because I feel like they're at a high, you know, they're always expected to know a lot more. But we just think about where our priorities are. And then also me as like a manager, I really rely on collaborative learning. I love it when I can assign a team member to present a new guideline. Um, I know when I'm presenting a new guideline or something like that, like I feel like I learn more, and I also learn a lot more from my peers than I do, you know, for instance, like a video or just reading myself. Um, and Stacy, I think you mentioned this too, is learning is it's not a checklist. You're not like just checking a box. It's like actually an ongoing process, because we're always learning. And we hear new things all the time. I know a lot of times, like even when I'm in a clinical chart, like there's been clinical things that I'm like, even though I'm still in the hospital, I have never heard of this before. What is this? And I love that our team also like shares emails throughout the day. And not just on like things that we're needing to learn about, but even humorous things, you know, that aren't documented correctly, or just it's kind of funny to read in a patient's chart. Nothing, of course, nothing about the patient, you know, but just the errors that some providers will make with like, I think there's like a talk to text or something, so funny things will come out. But we just have to remember that learning is an ongoing process and not just a check the box.
Sounds great. I'm going to skip past one of the questions because Jen, you kind of elaborated on how they
Uh-huh.
were taking their feedback, on the QA. So I'm going to skip past a couple, well, one of them. What role can CDI leaders or mentors play in helping staff shift from fixed to growth mindset behaviors in day-to-day work?
Yeah, I think leaders, especially number one, I think they set the tone by how they respond to like mistakes and new ideas that are being told. Leaders can also share stories about their own growth, and how they've struggled in the past, because there's so many moving parts in CDI, and there's so many parts that we're not picking up on, and where we've struggled on other areas, whether it's, you know, queries or just understanding clinical processes. Um, but yeah, just sharing their stories and having an open door policy. Like text anytime. But also sharing stories of when they've struggled, I think is important too.
Okay, last question for you, Jen, and this is a big one. As AI and automation evolve in CDI, what mindset shifts will be most critical for specialists to stay relevant and empowered?
Yeah, I really get it. A lot of CDI fear replacement. I think a lot of coding fear replacement. I mean, I can't even, and I started using AI, I feel like maybe a year ago, like using AI for certain things. But recently, like how much it's grown and how much I use it you know, for work and outside of work, it's it's growing so quickly. Um, but I think we always have to remember that AI will never replace the human judgment that a CDI brings. It doesn't have that sort of judgment. And as specialists who view AI as like a partner and improve that really does help us improve our accuracy and efficiency are the CDI specialists that are going to stay ahead. We really have to embrace it. I actually am in school, and I know like a lot of schools have always worried about AI and whatnot. They're even saying now with like colleges, it's not going anywhere. We have to embrace it and we have to work with it. And it's really important just to stay curious about these tools and to use it when we can. It's going to help
Thank
us a lot.
for sure. Thank you. Okay, Deb, your turn. Please
I was
share.
patient, quiet, sitting patient and quiet. Yeah.
Yes, you're doing a great job. Please share about your current role and CDI background.
Sure. My current role, I am the Senior Director of Insights at Tendo, and Tendo is a software and analytics firm. We are building AI tools to support documentation, specifically around quality and quality improvement, rankings and ratings. I've been here for about a year and a half, and this was a big shift for me, career-wise. I came from the hospital background. I worked in CDI for many years. I spent a lot of time as a CDI specialist, and then eventually, as a CDI director, specifically at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, and had really the pleasure there of CDI reporting up through quality. So that's kind of how I got my quality legs, and then eventually was promoted to the executive director of quality, still with CDI under me. So when I transitioned to this role at Tendo, it was a whole new mindset, right? I had to change the way I thought about everything, because now I'm working for a business, I'm working for a software company. I don't know that technology lingo, so it was a big mindset shift for me, for sure.
Okay, that is a big change for sure. How have you seen that fixed mindset thinking show up in CDI teams or individuals, and what impact did it have on performance or morale?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so I think so for CDI, especially for nurses, we were kind of trained in there is a right way to do things, and we'll teach you the right way, and that's how you do it. And then, so in CDI, things are changing so quickly. So as nurses, we learn the right way to do it, and now we're saying, okay, but now there's a better way, or there's a different way. That can be very difficult for CDI teams, especially if you're nurses, I think. And I don't mean to call us nurses out, but I do think that that's, specifically how we were trained to think. Also, I would say since the transition to more teams being remote, I'm a big fan of remote. But I think as more teams go remote and the team atmosphere is, a little bit less evident, we kind of are out there on our own little islands, and it can be very easy for CDI teams and individuals to just get into a very rigid flow and disciplined flow. And when we have that rigidity and over disciplined, it can be very difficult then to change the way we think about things.
Kind of feeding off that question, what do you think are some key ingredients for building a growth-oriented CDI team culture that it does embrace feedback and innovation?
I think it really comes down to everybody needing to be on the same page about the why. We can talk about the change is usually the what, like how we're doing things, what are we doing differently? But when you understand the why we're doing something differently, and that why has to be supported, right? Change can't just be for the sake of change. They need to, and we all need to understand why we're changing things. And I think when we kind of come together with, and somebody mentioned the shared purpose, I'm, very much a proponent of us all kind of coming under one umbrella and sharing in a goal. That's how we kind of overcome that mindset.
I know you talked earlier about, learning and changing and growing, but in a field where guidelines and technology are changing quickly and rapidly, how do you maintain continuous learning without feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, it's got to be part of our everyday practice. I think learning can't be one other thing, as someone also said. I feel like I'm repeating, but maybe with different language. It can't be just to check the box. It's got to be part of our everyday work. We need to build time in throughout the week, throughout the day, block off an hour here or an hour there. And it needs to be, just kind of built into everything that we do. And I think that it does have a lot to do with mindset and seeing ourselves as lifetime learners. I'll kind of sprinkle that into the next question on here, and which is, how do CDI specialists use feedback differently? And I think that also comes down to our how we frame our mindset and how we identify. So if we identify as someone who is a lifelong learner, then feedback kind of becomes something that we want, rather than something that can make us feel defensive. So I think it's important, as individuals to try to reframe our minds and think about ourselves as lifelong learners, and as leaders, I think it's, our jobs to support that, emulate that.
Great. So obviously the next question would be, what role can CDI leaders or mentors play in helping staff shift from the fixed to growth mindset behaviors in their day-to-day work?
It comes down a lot down to emulating behavior. So we want as mentors and leaders to for our teams to emulate our behavior, as long as that, so we need to be showing that behavior in ourselves. We need to be lifelong learners. We need to be open-minded. And, you did not ask me the second question, or the third question there, which I'm going to go back to if we have time, because I think it says a lot about how we changed and how we, how I personally had to kind of come to enlightenment, if you will, on my personal mindset and change and how that affected the team that I was working with. But I had this experience, and it's been quite a while ago, and I was a new CDI director at the time. So I think at that time I definitely had the mindset that I needed to prove myself. And our VP at the time brought in a vendor, and I had not chosen the vendor. The vendor kind of, was just laid at our feet, and I think I was resistant to that for sure. I also didn't feel like they were supporting us the way that I would have wished they had been. But after a few months of the vendor being kind of in our space and trying to collaborate, I was called into our CFO's office. And our CFO, I had never met before. I was very intimidated just to get called to this person's office. And then I come in and he has a whiteboard, a whole wall that's just a whiteboard, and there's all sorts of notes and stuff. And I thought of this when Stacy showed the list of kind of fixed mindset, because it had my name, and then I'm looking like it's still there, but it's not. It had my name, and then it was listed out: defensive, argumentative, resistant. And I saw that before he even started to speak to me, but he said, I was just speaking with so and so from such and such a vendor, and this is how they describe you. And I was floored. And one of the few times that I actually came to tears in my job. And I was really surprised that that's how the vendor described me. And then, so what did I do immediately? I got more defensive, more resistant. But it took me some time after I left his office, went to my manager, explained to her everything that had just happened. And she said, well, do you see any of that in yourself? And I was like, no, but. And then I realized, yes, that was how I was displaying those behaviors, and it was trickling down into the team. So because I was being defensive and argumentative and pushing back, then the team felt that they were allowed to do that same thing. So we all kind of had this pushback. When I was able to take a step back, think about the why behind why the vendor was here, how they could help me, how they could help the team, and then kind of, switch that and help the team see that as well. I think we all really benefited from that. But for me, it was a turning point in my career to have to see those things about how somebody described me, and that, yeah, that probably was me at that moment. But I knew I didn't want to be that person. So a hard lesson learned.
Thank you so much, Deb, for sharing that vulnerable post. I mean, I think that vulnerability, because I think we all can relate to that. Sorry, Vanessa, I just wanted to say thank you, because sometimes that's hard. I bet that was a really hard turning point, but thanks for sharing that, because I think we can all relate to that.
Yeah, I think we can. I think we've probably all been in some similar situation, but for me, it's something, it's been years now, but it still comes to mind as probably the biggest turning point for me.
Well, thank you both so much. We're going to turn this back over to Allison, and she's going to wrap us up and hear how you can get your free ACTA CEUs. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you all for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, a big shout out to our panelists, Jen and Deb, for sharing your valuable insights and expertise with our audience today. Also want to extend our appreciation to Stacy for leading us through empowering CDI through continuous learning, and then Vanessa for leading us through today's roundtable discussion. So here at e4health, we're proud to continue offering complimentary monthly CDI tips and CDI roundtables, complete with ACDIS-approved CEUs and practical case studies. And to stay informed about upcoming sessions and resources, please make sure to follow e4health on LinkedIn and subscribe to both our customer newsletter and CDI Insider if you haven't already. And if you're not a e4health customer yet, but interested in joining our CDI service team, we'd love to hear from you. Our team is growing, and we're always looking for passionate professionals who want to make a difference in clinical documentation and patient care. In the survey you'll receive today, you'll find an option to indicate your interest in connecting with our talent acquisition team. Simply check that box, and we'll follow up with more information about current opportunities and next steps. We're looking forward to you joining us to be part of a team that's redefining excellence in CDI. And if you were as inspired as I was on today's discussion, and you'd like to learn more about how E4 can elevate your CDI program, we'd love to connect. Be sure to indicate your interest in the survey, as our CDI services team is passionate about partnering with organizations like yours to drive excellence, empower teams, and make a lasting impact in clinical documentation. Together, let's take your CDI program to the next level. And if you enjoyed today's discussion and you're interested in attending another ACDIS credentialed webinar, we'd like to invite you to join our next CDI Leadership Roundtable focused on CDI quality, collaboration, accuracy, outcomes, and accountability. This session is scheduled for Wednesday, February 4th from noon to 1 p.m. So we're taking a little break around the holidays, but we look forward to another engaging and insightful conversation with our CDI community. And really, now's the time you've all been waiting for. We're excited to provide all attendees with a free ACDIS CEU courtesy of e4health. To receive your certificate, complete the evaluation link that's going to be shared in the team's Q&A and chat. But don't fret. You will also find this link in a follow-up email, which also includes the recording of today's webinar. Once you submit the survey, you'll receive a link to download your ACDIS CEU certificate. And as we wrap up today and reflect on the season of gratitude, our team here at e4health wants to extend our heartfelt thanks to you, our loyal listeners, customers, colleagues, and potential customers on your continued trust and partnership. We truly appreciate the opportunity to interact and work with you to be part of your CDI journey this year. So to reinforce Stacy's opening remarks, we'd like to end today's webinar by wishing everyone on the call today and your loved ones a wonderful Thanksgiving filled with joy, connection, and peace. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We'll keep it open, but the link is now in the Q&A section as well as the chat.